Hi, Tom Fitton here again with our weekly update for those of you following us on Facebook. President Judicial Watch, lots to talk about this week. Those of us who joined us for our last update recall that earlier this week we submitted 25 questions to Hillary Clinton, written questions that a federal court is ordering her to respond to in writing under oath within 30 days. And those 30 days run September 29th. And during the last video, I read the questions at length. So they're available online at judicialwatch.org. But generally speaking, they're questions about Mrs. Clinton's use of her email system, how it was set up, why it was set up, who used it, how did she use it, why is it that the Federal Records Act was which is the key law mandating that government records be maintained so we know what the government's up to. Why is it that law was ignored? Why was the Freedom of Information Act, which is the key law for government accountability also, because it allows us to get access to government records. That's how we have a lot of the Clinton emails we're talking about. That's how we know about Benghazi. That's how we know about the IRS. And Mrs. Clinton kept all of that away from us, at least for a time, due to her secretive email usage on that server in her basement, or we're not even sure it's in her basement. Maybe we'll find that out when she responds under oath. But you can look at all those questions on our website at judicialwatch.org, and I don't want to read them for you again, but they're 25 questions. They're simple, they're straightforward, and we hope we get straightforward answers from Mrs. Clinton. Her lawyers may work on it, obviously. I know a lot of you are thinking about that. You won't, her lawyers will write it, but she has to certify that those are her answers under oath, no matter who helps her create that information. Another big development this week, a major development, major headlines across the country, is that Mrs. Clinton had Benghazi materials on the emails she deleted. Now remember, when she left office, she had 60 or so thousand emails, or so we're told. And she only turned over half of them to the State Department 2 years later. And supposedly she deleted the rest because they were personal. Remember she said about the yoga classes and her daughter's wedding and things like that? Well, the FBI went and recovered 15,000 of those deleted emails, it looks like, and turned them over to the State Department. And the State Department's going to have to start turning them over to us. One of our lawsuits asked for Benghazi Clinton emails, and that search was done, and the State Department told us last week they found some Benghazi emails in this batch of deleted materials that supposedly were entirely personal. How does that work? Now, they didn't tell us how many they had, but they said they would need a month or two to turn them over. And we're like, well, what do you mean a month or two? How many did you find? Because if it's 1,000 emails, maybe it will take some time, but if it's not that many, let's see. They didn't want to tell us. So we had to go into federal court to find out, and there are 30 Benghazi emails on this system, which is astonishing, the fact there are any at all. But secondly, the government wanted till September, I think, 30th to turn them over and review them. A email a day, that's right. And the federal court judge, who is an Obama appointee, suggested that would not be appropriate and demanded an explanation as to what they found and how quickly they can turn it over by September 6th, which is Tuesday, the day after Labor Day. So on Tuesday, we're going to find out when we're going to get those documents. But either way, we're going to get them by September 30th. It's a question of whether we can get them sooner than that. So major development there. That in a week of, it seems like every week here at Judicial Watch, there are new developments as a result of our litigation. It's all coming to a head. And believe it or not, it isn't time to the election. This is happening because the State Department stalls the release of documents and then gives them to us. And all we do is try to get them out as quickly as we possibly can, given the public interest here. But the timing is one of Mrs. Clinton's making, because she kept all these documents away from us. Her deputy kept all these documents away from us, Yuma Abedin. I'll talk about that in a second. And then the State Department then gets these documents and stalls the release of them. So all of this timing issue is one of Mrs. Clinton's own making, and these documents are going to come out in dribs and drabs over the next month or two, including the emails that she deleted, but didn't manage to delete entirely because of the FBI investigation. A new batch of emails also came out just yesterday. We got them earlier in the week. We reviewed them and put them out yesterday. And lots of interesting information in them. As the press release says, Judicial Watch, new Aberdeen emails reveal top Clinton Foundation executive Doug Bann sought diplomatic passport from Clinton State Department. Okay, the Clinton Foundation head, chief executive or top executive Doug Bann was communicating with Huma Abedin in 2009 to get a diplomatic passport for he and his colleagues. He's not allowed to have a diplomatic passport. The law restricts diplomatic passports to a narrow subset of individuals working for the government. And this is the law. A diplomatic passport is issued to a foreign service officer, and the foreign service staffs the State Department, or to a person having diplomatic or comparable status because he or she is traveling abroad to carry out diplomatic duties on behalf of the United States government. And when authorized by the State Department, spouses and family members obviously can get such passports. And also contractors can get such passports. Doug Bann wasn't a spouse of a family member, didn't have a spouse or family member who was a diplomat. He wasn't a government contractor, and he obviously wasn't a diplomat. Yet he's seeking a diplomatic passport for Huma Abedin. And what is Huma Abedin's response to him as Deputy Chief of Staff? Okay, we'll figure it out. Now, we put this material out, and of course the Clinton campaign says, how dare Judicial Watch question this, because Doug Bann needed a diplomatic passport because he was going to go with Bill Clinton to North Korea to rescue some American journalists who had been held hostage by the North Koreans. Well, he couldn't get a diplomatic passport whether or not he was participating in that trip, and the rules prohibited it, so I don't even buy that. But secondly, why the heck was, again, the Clinton Foundation being used on this sensitive mission? First of all, I don't know about sending a former president to North Korea to get American hostages. I mean, it was a coup for the North Koreans that make that happen. But secondly, we also found emails showing that Bill Clinton intervened to get a major donor, the head of Dow Chemical, a quick meeting with Hillary Clinton. And it turned out Dow Chemical's plane was used as part of this so-called rescue mission. Now, Dow Chemical is one of the largest corporate donors to the Clinton Foundation. Again, outsourcing our foreign policy to the Clinton Foundation. And the idea that Mr. Doug Bann would even be considered for a diplomatic passport at the State Department shows you how corrupted the process was. And the other emails show that a friend of ours, Newsmax CEO Chris Ruddy, who also gave money to the Clinton Foundation, was able to get Doug Bann to communicate with the State Department and get some responses on an issue related in Panama. So another donor taken care of by Doug Bann at the foundation for and advocated by where there was Doug Bann was committing advocacy for this donor with the State Department, and successful advocacy because he did get at least some communications from the relevant official for the donor. And it also shows that Hillary Clinton herself broke her ethics pledge. She promised, you may remember, not to, again, participate personally and substantially in any particular matter involving specific parties in which the William J. Clinton Foundation or the Clinton Global Initiative is a party or represents a party. How does that fit in with this? The new Aberdeen emails also include an email exchange between Sidney Blumenthal and then Secretary of State Clinton, in which Blumenthal proposes a Clinton Global Initiative meeting in Ireland. Clinton forwarded Blumenthal's email to Aberdeen, Mills, and Doug Bann, the Clinton Foundation executives, saying, I think this is a good idea and see no conflict. Huh. Well, I thought she wasn't going to involve herself in any of this, and she did. And not only is she involving herself, but she's absolving herself of any conflict of interest. Certainly, you can't judge whether you have a conflict of interest in any normal government operation. That's why you have ethics officers and advisors and legal counsel. Was there a conflict? Obviously, and she broke her rule and broke the law, arguably, by, again, taking care of family business through the State Department. Plenty more here in this email system, and these new emails were 510 pages. By the way, we found more Clinton emails in this batch of Aberdeen emails. Well, just to put some context, Yuma Abedin had an email account on Clinton's illicit server, and we're getting emails from that. And Abedin has Mrs. Clinton's emails, some of which Mrs. Clinton didn't turn over to the State Department. So we're finding new Clinton emails that reflect on government business, and you may recall both in the court case that we have, where she said, as far as I know, all my government employed records have been turned over, and she was much more definitive to Congress in saying, as far as she knew, all records were turned over. Or she said all records were turned over. She didn't say, as far as I know. She was more definitive, which raises questions about whether she told the truth. That leads me to the next issue. And we had our book come out today, by the way, this week, Clean House. You got to buy it. You buy it. It goes to Judicial Watch. It helps Judicial Watch. So please buy it. Clean House, Exposing Our Government Secrets and Lies. It gives you the key background on the Clinton email scandal, Benghazi, IRS, immigration, Obamacare, and it also tells you the way forward. What should we demand from whoever is elected in Congress or the presidency in terms of reforming this out-of-control and corrupt government? I was talking to a Daily Mail reporter about the book and our work generally, and I made the point that one of the dirty little secrets here in Washington is that Congress has the ability to impeach Hillary Clinton now. So you have Congress yelling at the Justice Department, you got to do an investigation of this and that related to Mrs. Clinton, and I don't dispute that that ought to happen. But Congress has abilities to enforce the rule of law. They can hold her in contempt of Congress if they think she illegally or illicitly withheld documents or misled them or lied to them. And they can always impeach an officer for misconduct in office, whether or not that official still is in office or not. So Mrs. Clinton leaving the Secretary of State position does not make her immune from impeachment for misconduct while as Secretary of State. And the way it would work is the House would impeach Mrs. Clinton, and any articles of impeachment would be sent over to the Senate, and they would have to hold a trial. And upon 2/3 of votes, if that's the floor for conviction, she could be convicted. And if she was convicted by the Senate, she obviously can't be removed from office, but she can be penalized in the form of this, ineligibility for future office. So I've raised this with members of Congress, and they become, as I told the Daily Mail, it's like they fall down on the floor and start shaking. They don't want to hear it. But I think it's a fair question to ask members of Congress, stop complaining about what the Obama administration is or isn't doing with respect to Mrs. Clinton's lawlessness, and start asking them, what are you doing about it, given the powers that Congress has under the United States Constitution. And before I go, there's something else I want to tell you about quickly. This is an interesting story. It's in the weekly update this week as well, which you can obtain. We send an email every week. Go to our website at judicialwatch.org. We have Judicial Watch uncovers a CIA Inspector General's Watergate history report. And this report has been kept secret for 42 years. So it took 42 years in a Judicial Watch lawsuit to force this release of a CIA, and it's a work in progress. Of course, only in government could you have a work in progress that's still going on after 42 years, or at least unfinished after 42 years. And it looks like that it was an internal CIA review of the Watergate issue. And the document confirms that at least one of the members of the plumbers that broke into the DNC headquarters was a CIA agent. And I don't think that's ever been confirmed as directly as it has been confirmed in this document. And there's really, there's a lot of interesting historical material in here where the CIA director and the acting FBI director told President Nixon to, quote, get rid of the people involved in the cover-up, no matter how high. So this is just a great historical document. It shows you that the more things change, what is it?
The more they stay the same.
The more things change, the more they stay the same. JB, my colleague here, reminds me of the truism. But that's so true here in Washington, D.C. No matter how high, we've got to hold government officials to account. And Richard Nixon didn't follow that advice. And of course, the CIA's advice in that regard might have been a little self-interested, But we need to understand that we've got these significant government agencies that haven't always had the cleanest hands in matters of government corruption over the years, and just don't think that because time has passed, things have gotten better. So that's important to remember. Also, go to our website as well, because there's some great Corruption Chronicles stories on some key immigration border-related issues. One about the scourge of drugs at the border, showing this tremendous increase in heroin and other trafficking at the border that is just devastating, as you know, communities across the nation. And another fantastic story that we picked up from reading Mexican newspapers, that there are tons of African migrants in Mexico just waiting to come into the United States. And I guess there's been the secret pact, it looks like, with the Mexicans and Central American countries, and obviously the African countries are involved as well, and you bet you the Obama gang is involved, where these African migrants will be led into the United States through the Mexican border. And as you know, you've got Africans that are from Somalia, which has been destroyed by terrorism and a hotbed of terrorism. The Somalian American community has had some trouble, or the Somalian community, refugee community, has had some trouble in that regard, where you've had too many Somalians supporting or willing to go abroad to support terrorism. But it's a complete nightmare at the border. And, I hear talks about, I don't comment on the presidential debates or the candidates much, because that's not our bailiwick. We can't tell you to vote for or against anyone. That's not what we do. We are here to educate you about what's going on. Let me educate you, and you should educate your public officials about this. We are in a crisis mode when it comes to national security on the border. You name it, human trafficking, terrorism, drugs, you name it. I don't think we can wait for, quote, a wall. We need to think about deploying significant security assets on our southern border so a calamity doesn't take place. So the idea we have to wait for a wall, to me, is insufficient. And we know how Washington works. You could have all sorts of public support for a wall, and Washington will take forever and a day, because we were already supposed to have a wall on the border, by the way, and our government bureaucracies have refused to spend the money and build it as the law required. So that's a major crisis. And another key talking point I think it's useful to have on the immigration debate, because we actually look at the laws related to immigration. We try to enforce the laws related to immigration. We sue sanctuary cities. We expose that the Obama administration isn't enforcing the rule of law. We file briefs with the courts. We get documents out showing the people they're releasing. We do independent reporting on the border security issue that the major media is afraid to do. But one thing we do, when you look at the law, you recognize that virtually every illegal alien here is in violation of criminal law. So when you hear the criminal illegal aliens will be sent out, or we're going to focus on the criminal illegal aliens, and you hear this both from Republicans and Democrats, to be sure. There's no Democrat says they're in favor of criminal illegal aliens. Illegal aliens who are here more than 30 days and don't have their papers are in violation of federal criminal law. So I don't know what this distinction is we're hearing about the illegal aliens who are criminals and the ones who aren't. Most of them are criminals by virtue of the fact they're here. And that would be uncomfortable for people to hear that, but that's what the law is. And I always think the best immigration reform is to start enforcing the law, and I just wish more people would be talking about that in a straightforward way. We don't need to do anything new other than start following the laws on the books. So a lot to be said. Clinton emails, Watergate, Richard Nixon back again, thanks to Judicial Watch and the news. We got our outrageous emails coming out of Huma Abedin's email account showing a diplomatic passport and was considered for the Clinton Foundation gang, and war donors were taken care of by the Clintons, and Hillary Clinton herself was involved in the whole mess, and of course Clean House. So get the book this weekend. It's a great one. It's your field guide to government corruption, and like I said, every purchase helps Judicial Watch. So have a wonderful weekend and great holiday, and we'll be back on Tuesday. So maybe we'll give. Well, I won't give you a report on Tuesday. I won't be here, but watch the news, because we're going to find out about the Benghazi emails from Mrs. Clinton in court on Tuesday, at least in a court filing. So watch the news early in the week to figure out what's happening, and obviously we'll be giving you reports via our website at judicialwatch.org and here on Facebook. So thanks again.